Perfect. What's going on, guys? Norm here. We are in the Flavor Lab, and what we're doing today, the greatest Canadian pizza. Alright, guys, before we get after it, what I wanted to do is give a shout out to my friends over at Nomad Hockey. As you can see, they hooked me up with this nice hockey glove, Black Lives Matter t-shirt. Go check them out on Instagram and Facebook, Nomad Hockey, and go look at nomadhockey.com. They make great hockey lifestyle apparel. Shots of them all over the world with people rocking their stuff, playing hockey. Their slogan is follow the game. I'm going to tell you, these guys are legit. I love them. I got a couple more shirts coming in the mail and a hat. I cannot wait to get them. Go check them out. Nomad Hockey. Rock these. Take a pic. Tag me in it. Tag them in it. Love it. All right, guys, let's get after this pizza. It looks like we have a lot of ingredients here, but this is still going to be fairly straightforward. So now usually when you do a Canadian pizza, you have your few things. You have your green pepper, your mushrooms, I have sometimes onions, pepperoni, cheese on a pizza, dunzo. So super simple, but what we're going to do is we're doing everything from scratch because we're going to make our own sweet sauce with maple syrup and we're going to make our own dough. So what we're going to need for the dough, we are going to need flour, which I already have portioned out into my bread maker, holder, canister, jobby, chamber, whatever you want to call it. We're going to need flour, sugar, extra virgin olive oil, bread maker yeast. If you don't have a bread maker, don't worry. You can just mix this by hand or however you want to do it. You just have to let it sit a little bit differently, cover it up and all that stuff. I'm just going to do mine in the bread maker because it's easy. We have our yeast, salt, and I use a little bit of our secret weapon, Maritime Madness Garden Herb seasoning. I'm going to drop a little bit of this in because what's more Canadian than our friends over at Maritime Madness rocking that local hot sauce and those seasonings. Buys are deadly. Alright, guys, so here is Norman from the future with a lesson. I added the Maritime Madness into the dough to get that flavor in it, and I think what I needed to do was just maybe put a little on the crust or something, because let me tell you, that did not work. So, dough came out incredibly fucked up. Starting again, so I got the dry ingredients, less that seasoning, that did go into the sauce. Our wet ingredients, the water and the oil. I'm not going to cut out the first part of this video because this is a lab. We experiment. Sometimes we make mistakes, and that happens. So starting over again, fresh batch of dough going into the bread maker. We're good. All right, so we'll get back to all the other shit that I did, and lesson learned. All right, guys. All right, guys, so now that we're back, we have the dough in the bread maker going. We're going to get to work on this beautiful sauce that we have. Now, you know when you get a Canadian pizza, if you get like those real nice Canadian pizzas, it has like a sweet sauce to it. That's what we're going to make here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some tomatoes. I have about 3 medium-sized tomatoes. We need a red onion, garlic. I buy the pre-minced garlic from Costco. I love this. We are going to need some bacon. I have some of the homemade bacon that I made. That maple syrup, some red wine, doesn't matter what kind, buy something that you like to drink because we're only using a little tiny bit of this and you can have a glass with the pizza. Some salt and a little bit of balsamic vinegar. Now, if you don't have all these things, it's not crucial. If you don't have the maple syrup, we can just use a little bit of extra sugar. If you don't have the balsamic, you can then use an extra little drop of the wine. You're not going to miss it a lot. This is just how I do it. You can experiment with this yourself, but I'm going to save you some of the hassle. We are going to go with a can of tomato paste. This is a 369 ml can. And again, we're going to use that garden herb. We're doubling down on this. I love this flavor. This is going to be good. Usually what I put in my tomato sauce, if I'm not doing the Canadian, is I do a little bit of basil, oregano, a little bit of thyme, garlic. but what I'm doing in this case is I'm using this because we're going with like a more maple flavor with it, so we're not going super Italian with it. So we're gonna use this, and also again a little drop of that olive oil. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get to chopping on these tomatoes, toss everything in a cast iron skillet, and then we're gonna fire that in and roast those in some olive oil. So I'll be back in about 5 minutes and I'll show you what I got done. All right, guys, so what I did is I cut up those 3 tomatoes. I put in about a third of that red onion that I had. And then what we're gonna do now is we're just gonna take out some of that garlic. So, if you want to be a little liberal with it, we're gonna toss what's probably gonna be about a giant tablespoon, 2 tablespoons on top of it. Mix that. Now this is going in cast iron. If you don't have the cast iron, don't worry about it. You can do this in just a regular baking sheet with some parchment paper. Because I'm using this same cast iron later, I'm just dirtying less dishes. So once that's on, you want to take a little bit of that olive oil and just coat the vegetables. That's going to help that roast. So get that on, mix those guys up. I'm going to pop that in the oven at about 400 degrees for probably about 15-20 minutes. Then get that out, then we're going to move to the next step. While that's in the oven, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to take my bacon. Now I have probably about 5 or 6 strips of thick cut. I'm going to cook that. I don't need to show you guys how to cook bacon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chunk that up. I'm going to cook it. That's going to go into our sauce. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pulse that down. That's going to be the salty component that goes into that sauce. So I'm going to get this in the oven. I'm going to cook the bacon. Then we're going to come back and we're going to put the rest together. Alright guys, welcome back. So the vegetables and fruit just came out of the oven. I got the bacon going now. If you can smell that, wish you could. So the next thing that we're going to do is I have the remainder of that red onion. We have a green pepper, mushrooms, and pepperoni. This we're going to get chopping because that's what we're going to top our pizza with. Now usually Canadian is pepperoni, onion, and pepperoni, green pepper, and mushrooms. I'm going to toss in a little bit of onion and make it a little tiny bit better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this into these tiny little thin strips, and then I'm going to come back and show you what we're working with. Alright guys, so the bacon finished up while I started the vegetables. I also did find a little piece of red pepper I'm going to throw on just for a little bit of color that I had left over. Waste not, want not, right? So we have our vegetables that's been all cooked down with the olive oil. I mixed in the bacon there. It's a little bit chunky now, but I'm going to hit that with the immersion blender after, so don't worry about it. What we're going to do right now is we're going to drop in a little tiny bit of balsamic vinaigrette, just a couple drops. We're going to get into our red wine. You know what? Why not, boss? Saturday. Long weekend, May 2-4. I know this is probably not going to come out until about Wednesday, but it's the weekend, boss. Have yourselves a little glass, little taste, little sippy, and then we're going to put probably about a third of a cup into that pot that we got. Mix that up. Now we're going to hit it with our tomato paste. Put that all in. Give that a quick little stir. This is going to go on the stove after for probably like 20 minutes or so. Give that a little stir now. We're going to hit this with our maple syrup. We're going to put probably about a quarter cup of this in, because we want it nice and sweet. And we're going to put probably about a tablespoon of that Maritime Madness Garden Herb in. Make sure we can taste it. Give that a little stir. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put this on the stove and we're going to hit it on high heat until this comes up to just about a boil. Then we're going to reduce to a simmer. So what we're going to do is we're going to blend all this together afterwards and we're going to get a nice smooth sauce. Get your blender. I'm going to use an immersion blender. If you don't have that, a regular blender works. If not, food processor. If you don't have that, guys, you might be shit out of luck. So I probably should have told you this earlier, but whatever. Follow along and watch this before you go shopping. So I'm going to get this on high heat, reduce, simmer, and we're laughing. All right, now, boys, let's get to chopping these vegetables. So like I said, I like a nice thin strip. If you have a mandolin, use it. I'm not going to. I do have one, but I've already dirtied enough, so I'm just going to go with the knife and the cutting board on this. So all we're looking at is thin little strips, kind of like this, you know, about a millimeter or so. That's all we want. And then do this to the peppers. We're going to do this to the onions. We're going to do this to the mushrooms. We're going to do this to the pepperoni. So get her nice and thin. Then we're probably going to put a little bit under the cheese and a little over the cheese. Now what I'm going with for the cheese, usually you want to do mozzarella mainly on pizza, but what I wanted to do is where we're going with a little bit of a different flavor with the maple and stuff like that, I'm going to hit it a little different. I'm going to go with a blend of mozzarella and a little bit of cheddar, and then I'm going to finish with a little bit of grated Parmesan over the top. So you can do all mozza if you want. That's entirely up to you. I'm going this route because I like a little tiny bit of cheddar on my pizza every once in a while, depending on what it is. Again, here's what we're looking at. That's how we're cutting it. All right, guys. So one thing I did want to let you know is that this pizza is going to do basically a large baking sheet full. That's probably you know like a regular cookie sheet or cooking sheet or whatever. If you don't want to do that, I'm only making half of that. Like I'm going to cut this probably in half and do a round. I'm putting it in the cast iron to do just a 12-inch, and I'm probably going to have a couple pieces now and probably have a couple pieces tomorrow. You can do the whole one if you have a big family. That's awesome. If you have another cast iron, what you can do is you can take the other half of the dough, lay it out with some garlic butter and matzah on it, and just do yourself a garlic fingers. I'm going to do that another episode. But for right now, I just want to let you know that this is going to be enough to feed. This is going to be probably 2 12-inch pizzas or 1 giant cooking tray. So let me finish chopping all this stuff up. Then we'll get back to the next part. All right, guys. Just working on the pepperoni here. Nice and thin. We're going to cut up probably a good, I don't know, 8 inches of it into thin, like about a millimeter. Again, if you got a mandolin, you could probably use it, but I'm cutting mine by hand. We're looking, that's pretty thin. We're going to put a little bit under the cheese, a little bit over the cheese. We're probably going to do that with most of the ingredients. I like some under, I like some over. It's all preference, right? You don't have to do it, you can just pile it all on top. I'm going this way. So, cut it all up. Or if you got a kid, bring your kid to work, make him cut it, her cut it. Go sit down, enjoy that Beano you got. It's not bad. Like a little red wine every once in a while. But yeah, let's cut it up. We got probably another 20-30 minutes or so, and then it's going to go into the oven. One thing I didn't mention, yeah, textbook Norman didn't mention something, is I like to coat my pan with cornmeal. So if you have cornmeal, go get it. If you don't worry about it. It's not crucial. I like that little bit to make the little bit of texture in the crust, but again, not super crucial to this process. I like it. You don't have to have it, but if you got it, go get it. So what we're going to do is we're going to oil the pan, then put a little bit of cornmeal on it, then drop that dough on. Why is this deadly? Anyways, again, probably got another 20 minutes, 30 minutes cook on that sauce. Then we're gonna get the oven going. Then we're gonna have pizza. Then we're probably gonna have a nap. Then we're gonna get up and watch hockey because it's playoffs, boys. I mean, not for me because I'm a Flyers fan, but I mean for everybody else. I mean, I'm still gonna watch, but it's not as good. All right, boys. So she's been a minute. So everything is done and ready to go. The dough is ready. Finally, accidents happen. Everything is cut up. We got our veg and our pep. That sauce is ready. Look at this sauce, guys. Look how thick that is. Thick boy. So that's good to go. That is the maple bacon Maritime Madness sauce. So all we got to do is we got to get our pan ready, get our dough out, and then let that sit for a couple minutes, put it all together, and then we're in the end game, boss. All right. So first thing we're going to do, we got to hit this pan with probably a tablespoon or two of olive oil. Get a good little grease going on it. So what I'm going to do, I just use a little sandwich baggie. Get that coated around. I don't want to get grease all over my hands. I mean, you don't have to use this. If you got gloves, awesome. I got a few, but they're a little small because they're Melissa's, and she's got tiny little hands, and I got fat, weird hands, so she don't work out. I'm built different. I'm built different. So anyways, get that going. Get that all coated around on the bottom, on the sides, because we don't want this to stick. I'm doing no crust. No end crust. I'm doing right to the edge with cheese and toppings, boys. All right, boys, so then we get our cornmeal. And then just give that a little shake around the pan. Get a little coating on there. Boys, don't be shy. All you want is enough to just kind of cover it. That's what you're looking at there. Not a ton, just enough to coat the bottom. You don't want too much. You just want to get that little tiny bit of texture in it. Next thing we're going to do, we'll get our dough out. So what I did is I took the liberty of taking out a little tiny bit of flour so that we can just kind of get on this dough and kind of smooth that out. Get it moving around a little tiny bit and onto the counter so that nothing sticks. That's all we want. Now again, this is probably enough for a giant foot by foot and a half tray. We don't need that. I'm doing a 12-inch pizza. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this not quite in half because I want a thick dough. I'm going to cut this into about 2/3 to 1/3. All right, so I got this. I'm going to start pressing it into our pan. Now, just use your hands, press it out to the edges. Once we get to the edges, that's it. You can make it ride up the pan a little bit if you want. Don't worry about that if it does. That's fine. You're going to get a little tiny bit of a crust riding up the edge. That's all good if you want that. I just want mine going right to the edge. And once I'm done pressing this out, I'm going to let it sit for another couple minutes and see how the shape takes to the pan. In case it proofs a little tiny bit more, it puffs in the middle or anything like that. I'm just getting this out in our circle shape here, our 12-inch pan. All right, guys, now that we got that pressed into the pan, just make sure she's even all the way through. You want it just right up to the edges again. And then we're looking at something like that. All right, guys, now that we got that all pressed into our pan, let that sit. I'm going to cover that again just for another couple of minutes with our dish towel clean, so don't worry about that. Let that sit for a couple of minutes and let that just kind of puff up a little bit. Then I'm going to get that into the oven just to start the top of it, because I just like to get the top a little tiny bit crisped up so that we get that full rise out of the dough. That's me. That's the way I do it. You don't have to do it that way, but that's what I'm going to do. So let this sit for a couple minutes. I'm going to poke it with a fork a little bit, and then we're going to get on to the next piece. But we're gonna eat soon. Fucking starving. Dough's good to go. We're gonna, actually, you know what? We're just gonna give her a couple little pokes with the fork. I always do this with my pizza. I find it helps the crust rise a little bit better. I don't know the science behind it. I know I work in a lab and all that, but it's just what I do. I find it helps. Badge agrees, apparently. So I'm just gonna get that in the oven. Just the dough for 5 minutes on 400 convection. When that comes out, we're gonna dress her up, pop her in, not convection, for probably about another 15 minutes or so. So about 400. I know usually you go like the wood fire, you go high heat and all that stuff. This is how I do it. So, I mean, you can follow what I do. It's science. All right, guys, so we got our dough ready to go. She puffed up a little tiny bit. She looks good. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna sauce her up. So I'm gonna do this right to the edge because I'm not doing a crust. I'm probably gonna have to cut it off the side of the pan, but I'm all right with that. She's all good. So let me just sauce this up here with that nice maple bacon sauce that we made. I'm gonna be telling my grandkids about this. Deadly. So will you though. So now that the sauce is on, we're gonna lay a nice liberal layer of pepperoni on it. Now we're gonna do pepperoni underneath, then we're gonna do the cheese, then we're gonna do a nice layer of toppings on top with more pepperoni. So we want pepperoni under, pepperoni over. Always, guys. Like, it gives it kind of a different texture. Like the pepperoni taste is really good. I like the way it is on its own, but it's at its best when it's crisped up on top. When the hot air hits that pepperoni and it like kind of fries it, legit. So I'm just gonna get this down and then we're gonna start adding the cheese and then the other toppings. So I'll be back in a minute and we'll get to the rest of it. All right, guys, we got that bottom layer of pepperoni going down. She's heavy. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna get our cheeses going. So I do have a bag of mozza shredded. I'm gonna start with that. Then I have a little bit of that mozza cheddar mix that I was talking about, because we do like a little bit of cheddar. Mainly mozza, you know what I'm saying? So get this on. You want to make sure that pepperoni, you're not seeing any of that pepperoni through there. All right, she's toast. And then we're going on to the mozza cheddar mixes. Again, mainly mozza, a little bit of cheddar. All right, that looks about right. Now let's start dropping some of them toppings on. So we got our mix of mushrooms, peppers, onions, all going on. Cover that guy up. Try to make sure you get a little bit of everything everywhere. Now that we got all the vegetables on, we're gonna drop a little bit more of that pepperoni on. Like I said, pepperoni over, pepperoni under. We're not going to be as liberal with it this time. We're going a little easier on it. I think that looks good. I think we're right about there. Now, because I am what I am, I'm going to drop just a little tiny sprinkle more cheese on. Just like a tiny bit to make sure everything kind of holds together. And then a little tiny bit of our grated parm. Now I use this craft stuff. You can buy the more expensive stuff if you want. I don't bother with it when I'm making pizza. It's nice, but I like to keep this craft on hand and then just kind of add a little bit of that to it. I mean, I love it. So I find the stuff at Costco though, it has a really good bite to it, so it would go really good on this, but for what I'm doing today, I like to craft with it, I think. Now again, glove on. Look at that. Sorry guys, that's hard to lift with my bad shoulder. Anyways, put that in the oven. That's going to go in for about 20 minutes. I'll check on it in about 15, and then we'll see what it's looking like. All right, boys. We had her on for 15 minutes at 400, and then finished at 400 convection. So if you don't have convection, not a problem. Just leave it on for the 5 minutes, or you can just put it on for broil for the last like 3, because it's going to just toast up the top a little bit. Let's see what she looks like. Oh, Lord. Look at that, guys. You smell that? Smell what the Norm is cooking? All right, I'm going to let that sit for a few minutes. Remember, that cast iron, that'll ruin you. Like, use your mitts. Don't do anything too crazy. Let that sit for at least 5 minutes, and then we're going to start cutting that out. Once that gets cut out, don't actually lick the knife, because what we're probably going to do is go around the pan like this and make sure all the edges are separated, because that cheese is probably going to stick. Now, what I did one time in all my glory was take that and lick it afterwards, and after being on the cast iron for that long, it was very unpleasant, because that cast iron is molten hot. So be extremely, extremely careful. Because have you watched the Avengers, or like any of the Hulk movies, the Avengers, like Infinity Stones, like the Hulk, when he like turns all big and green, his pants like rip open, and like they kind of like dangle, and they're like all just like shreds. If you lick this after you pull it away from the pan, the top of your mouth and your tongue are going to look like the tattered Hulk's pants. You don't want that, because your shit will be not right for like at least a week, and you won't be able to taste nothing. And then this whole thing was just not worth it. So cut her out. Do not put it on your tongue. And then we're going to come back in about 5 minutes. We're going to get this onto our cutting board, and we're going to enjoy, boys. All right, boys, we're here. Just look at it. Just look at it. No crust, just melted cheese, like pan cheese all the way around to the edge. This is ultimate, boys. So let's get after it. Get your pizza wheel if you got it. If not, figure out a way to cut it with a knife. Don't envy if you got to do that. I'm only cutting this into 4 because I'm starving. Eyes, oh boys. Look at it. Fit. It's not fit. That dough is super thick. All those toppings are cooked perfect. That meat sauce is in there. Oh my god, guys, that dough just comes through like it is so fluffy. The pepperoni, the top and bottom pepperoni. You gotta go pepperoni over, pepperoni under. That meat sauce. The maple is the clincher. That's the key. Oh my god, boss. Oh my god. I don't even know what planet I'm on. This is too good. That cornmeal texture. Oh. go check out my boys at Nomad Hockey, nomadhockey.com. Check them out on Instagram and Facebook. If you get one of their shirts, tag them in it, tag me in it. I'd love to see it. But again, legit, this is probably the best pizza I ever had right here. Little vino, I mean, I love it. So get after it, try this out, let me know what you think. If you have any suggestions, I want to hear them. But again, boss, don't be going home hungry. You know that. Get after it.